Are you in God's will? That has to be one of the most difficult questions that Christians ask themselves, because we want to be in God's will. The problem is He doesn't give us a map, so we can never be absolutely certain. It means that we have to make decisions based on faith, and that can be really scary. So how do we know if we are walking in God's will? Well, probably the most common criteria that we use is that when we take a step in God's will, doors open. And we expect then that as the doors open, everything works out and a red, welcoming carpet opens up in front of us. And then we can be pretty confident we made the right decision. But what if you step into what you feel is God's will and the doors don't open? Does that automatically mean that you're outside of God's will? Well, let's look at some biblical examples. Remember Joseph? He had a prophetic dream that he would be a major ruler. And look what happened. Very shortly after that, he was in a pit, looking up, facing a career in slavery. David was anointed to be king of Israel as a teenager, but a very short time later, he was a fugitive living in caves with outlaws. And even the Apostle Paul, in the record of his journeys, he walked to many countries, and as soon as he got there, the door was closed. God or the Holy Spirit didn't let him in. Did that mean he was outside of God's will? You know, that was a lot of wasted steps, you could think, but he wasn't out of God's will. In fact, this even happened to me. In 2005, God spoke to me about a major change in my life direction, in the direction of my ministry. And it required some significant changes in my life to prepare for that. So I immediately obeyed, and one of the changes was so big it took 2 years to work it through, but I finally completed it, and I'm still waiting for the door to open. But I know that I'm in the center of God's will, and the door's still closed. So closed doors are very frustrating, but what if you take a step into what you think is God's will, and disaster strikes? Does that mean that you've made a mistake and you're outside of God's will? Well, look in the Bible again. Remember, Jesus told the disciples to go across the lake, and a storm hit them that was so severe that even experienced career fishermen thought they were going to die for sure. And Paul, he was going to Rome on God's assignment, and there's an enormous shipwreck and everything is lost but the lives of the people. Did that mean they were out of God's will? Not at all. So whether you are facing delay or disaster, you could still be in the center of God's will. You see, this is a trust issue. God told us to walk by faith, not by sight. Now, if everything was going to work out just fine and all the doors were going to open and the path would all be smooth in front of you, you could walk by sight. Obviously, there was going to be some surprises along the way, or He wouldn't have told us that we would need to walk by faith. And our muscles in our body are only strengthened when we're pressing against resistance. And so our faith only gets stronger when we have to face surprises. So to live a transformed life, you need to learn how to walk by faith. Now I want to hear from you. How has God taught you to walk by faith? Just leave your comments in the box below. And if this is your first visit here, you need to get my free self-assessment guide. And to do that, just subscribe to my weekly email newsletter by filling out the subscription form, and you know where it is, it's always right there. And I'll talk to you again next week, but this week, walk by faith, trust Him, don't be distracted by delay or disaster.